"You're not welcome at this table," my mom snapped, sliding my plate away. My sister smirked. "After what you did, you should be ashamed." I stared at them. "What are you talking about?" That's when she told the lie that destroyed everything. My name is Danielle Harper, and I'm 34 years old. I grew up in a middle-class Ohio family where appearances meant everything. We lived in a beige house on a quiet street where every neighbor smiled and every family pretended things were fine. I wasn't the flashy one. I was never loud or attention-seeking. I worked part-time through college, became a registered nurse, and built my life slowly, one careful step at a time. My younger sister, Kristen, the one they always praised, could do no wrong in their eyes. She had this way of lighting up a room and making everyone forget what she'd done 5 minutes earlier. I was practical, quiet, responsible. She was dramatic, charming, and always somehow the victim. The night everything fell apart, I had just gotten accepted into a competitive trauma training program. It was the proudest moment of my career. I thought my parents would finally see me. I thought they'd finally be proud. Instead, they believed a story about me stealing money meant for her tuition. I didn't steal anything, but they never asked for proof. They never sat me down and said, "Tell us what happened." Within a week, they cut me off. No calls, no holidays, no explanations, just silence. I wasn't rich or glamorous. I didn't have connections or a fancy lifestyle. But I had something they didn't expect. I had resilience. And I had a skill set that would one day make me the last person they could afford to lose. If you've ever been blamed for something you didn't do, you know how isolating that feels. Subscribe if you've had to rebuild your life without family support. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been the one they didn't believe? Click hype if you've learned to stand on your own. It was supposed to be a celebration dinner. My mom made pot roast, which she only did for special occasions. The dining room smelled like rosemary and warm bread, and for a moment, I actually believed they cared about my achievement. I had printed out my acceptance letter. I wanted to frame it later, but first I wanted to see their faces when they read it. I never got the chance. Before I could even pull the letter from my bag, Kristen leaned back in her chair and said, "So are we going to talk about the $5,000? The room went cold. I looked at her. "What $5,000? She tilted her head like she was explaining something to a child. I saw the bank statement. "Danielle, $5,000 transfer out of the shared emergency account. It went straight to your account." I felt the air leave my lungs. I set down my fork and looked at my parents. My dad's jaw was tight. My mom wouldn't make eye contact. "That account requires dual authorization," I said slowly. "I don't even have login access. You set it up under both your names." My dad cut me off before I could finish. "Stop lying. We trusted you with information about that account and you took advantage." I didn't take anything. My voice cracked, but I held steady. "Let me see the statement. Let me show you." My mom shook her head. "We've seen enough." Kristen pressed a tissue under her eyes, though I noticed no actual tears. "I can't believe she'd do this to me," she whispered. "That money was for my last semester." My dad pushed his chair back and stood up. "Until you pay it back, don't come back here." I looked around the table. Nobody defended me. Nobody even hesitated. I picked up my bag, walked out the front door, and sat in my car for 20 minutes in complete silence. The sound of the engine ticking as it cooled was the only thing I could hear besides my own breathing. Within days, the story spread, extended. Family heard a twisted version. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all of them got the same rehearsed narrative. I was uninvited from Thanksgiving, blocked on social media, erased, and here's the part that still makes my stomach turn. Months later, I quietly requested records from the bank. The transfer was made using Kristen's own login credentials, time-stamped, documented. She moved the money herself, but my parents never cared enough to verify. They had already chosen their side. The fallout didn't stop at the dinner table. It followed me like a shadow I couldn't outrun. The first real blow came when my cousin Andrea got engaged. I found out through a coworker who saw the invitation on social media. I wasn't on the guest list. When I called my Aunt Linda to ask why, she sighed like I was inconveniencing her. We can't have drama at the wedding. Danielle, you understand. I understood perfectly. I just wasn't allowed to say so. Kristen, meanwhile, made sure the narrative kept breathing. She hinted to mutual friends that I was unstable with money. She never said it directly. Of course, she was too smart for that. She'd say things like, I just worry about her, you know, and let people fill in the blanks. The second hit came from a place I never expected. A family friend named Joan worked in hospital administration 2 towns over. One afternoon during a shift change, she pulled me aside in the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the smell of antiseptic hung thick in the air. I heard about the tuition situation. Joan said carefully, I just want you to know. If you ever need a reference, I'd want to be honest. I stared at her. Honest about what? About your character. Given what happened, my chest tightened. Kristen hadn't just poisoned my family. She had reached into my professional world and planted doubt there too. The third blow was the quietest and somehow the worst. About a year after the dinner, my mom called. I saw her name on the screen and my heart jumped. I thought maybe she'd reconsidered. Maybe she'd look at the evidence. Maybe she missed me. Danielle, she said, her voice stiff and rehearsed. If you just apologize, we can fix this. I closed my eyes. Apologize for what? For hurting your sister. I sat on the edge of my bed in my tiny apartment. The heater rattled against the wall outside. The sound of a train horn echoed somewhere far off. I wanted to scream. I wanted to list every fact, every timestamp, every shred of proof. Instead, I said, I won't confess to something I didn't do. She hung up. After that, I stopped waiting. I poured myself into nursing. I picked up extra shifts. I earned certifications in trauma care, emergency triage, and critical response. I moved cities. I found a small apartment near the hospital where the windows face east and the morning light came in gold and warm. I didn't talk about my family. I didn't explain the gap in my holiday plans. I just worked. The pain didn't disappear. It never does when the people who raised you decide you're disposable, but it hardened into something useful. It became discipline, focus, quiet, and movable strength. 6 years passed with almost no contact, and in that silence, I became someone none of them recognized. What they didn't know was that I kept everything. Every email my mother sent, every passive-aggressive message Kristen posted online, every public comment that hinted at my supposed dishonesty. I saved screenshots. I followed them by date. I stored them in a folder on a drive I kept locked in my bedside drawer. Years ago, quietly and without telling anyone, I had requested the full bank documentation, transaction logs, login records, IP addresses, timestamps. Every piece of data told the same story. Kristen transferred the money herself. I never exposed her. I never posted it online. I never forwarded it to a single family member. I didn't need revenge. I needed truth. And truth is patient. It waits. Over those 6 years, I also became a senior trauma nurse at one of the busiest hospitals in the region. I held certifications most nurses spend a decade chasing: emergency leadership training, advanced cardiac life support, crisis intervention authority. I had built something real. Something no one could fabricate or take from me. I had a plan they never saw coming. Not to destroy them, not to humiliate anyone, but to protect myself if the day ever came when facts mattered more than feelings. And that day arrived on a random Tuesday night when the air outside smelled like rain and the air was already running at full capacity. The one person in my family who never turned on me was my cousin Rachel. She was the family's so-called outcast, the one who asked many questions and never played along with the polished image everyone else maintained. Rachel never believed the theft story, not for a second. She told me once over the phone, her voice low like she was afraid someone would hear. I saw Kristen logging into that account. Danielle, I was at your parents' house, and she was on the desktop in the study. She didn't know I was in the hallway. She sent me screenshots she had saved from that day. The browser tab, the login screen, the timestamp on her phone's photo. We never acted on it. We never made a scene. But we kept it, like a fire extinguisher behind glass. You hope you never need it. But you don't throw it away. 6 years after that dinner, I was halfway through a 12-hour night shift when a trauma case rolled in through the double doors. The paramedics were shouting vitals. The stretcher wheels squealed against the tile floor. I pulled on gloves and moved toward the bay. Then I saw the face on the stretcher. It was Kristen, pale, unconscious, severe internal bleeding from a car accident. I stopped breathing for exactly 2 seconds. Then I moved, because that's what training does. It overrides everything else. Within 20 minutes, my parents came rushing through the ER entrance. My mother's coat was buttoned wrong. My father's hands were shaking. They saw me standing at the nurse's station with a chart in my hand, and they froze. My mom whispered to my dad, but I heard it clearly. Of all hospitals, the attending physician assigned me to coordinate Kristen's stabilization because I was the senior trauma nurse on shift. My parents looked conflicted. I could see the war on their faces, fear pulling one direction, pride pulling another. They assumed I would step back, recuse myself, disappear the way I always had. Instead, I stepped forward, calmly, professionally. Rachel arrived 30 minutes later. She didn't say much. She just stood beside me in the hallway, arms folded, steady and present. Consent forms piled up, emergency decisions stacked on top of each other, medication approvals, surgical coordination, risk assessments. My parents looked around the room at the doctors, the techs, the monitors beeping in sharp rhythms, and slowly, painfully, they realized something they had never considered before. I was the most qualified person in that building to guide what happened next. Kristen survived surgery. The doctors stabilized the bleeding, but she needed a follow-up procedure, a risky one, the kind that required family consent and careful coordination between the surgical team and the floor nurse managing her recovery. That floor nurse was me. We gathered in the family consultation room down the hall from the ICU. The walls were pale blue, a single window let in the orange glow of the parking lot lights. The table between us was small and round, and it felt like the walls were listening. My parents sat across from me. My dad's hands were clasped together so tightly his knuckles had gone white. My mom kept looking at the door like she wanted to leave. The attending surgeon explained the risks of the follow-up procedure, blood clot potential, anesthesia complications. The numbers weren't comforting. He asked my parents if they had questions. My dad muttered something under his breath without looking at me. Can we trust her? The surgeon looked confused. I didn't flinch. I reached behind me and pulled a manila folder from my bag. I set it on the table and opened it slowly. You trusted a life for 6 years, I said. Now look at the truth. Inside were the printed bank records, transaction logs showing the transfer, dual authorization records showing the login credentials used. Every single entry pointed to one person. I turned the pages toward them. Her login, her credentials, time-stamped. Rachel stepped forward from the corner of the room. I saw her. Do it, she said quietly. I was in the hallway at your house. She was on the desktop. I took a photo of the screen. I have the original file on my phone with the metadata still intact. The room went completely still. The hum of the air vent above was the only sound. Then Kristen, pale and trembling in the doorway where a nurse had wheeled her in for the family discussion, whispered, I was scared you'd leave me behind. I looked at her. 6 years of silence. 6 years of being erased. And that was what she had to say. I kept my voice steady. So you left me first. My mother's face crumbled. Tears ran down her cheeks in uneven lines. Why didn't you fight harder? She asked. I almost laughed. Almost? I did. I said, you just didn't listen. I closed the folder and placed both hands flat on the table. I will continue coordinating her care. because that is my job and I am a professional. But after this, the truth goes where it belongs, on the record, in the open. No more lies and no more silence. They looked at each other, then they looked at me, and for the first time in 6 years, they didn't see the girl they blamed. They saw the woman who showed up anyway. The story that protected their favorite had been built on her own deception. And now every person in that room knew it. The power had shifted, not because I demanded it, because the truth finally had enough room to breathe. Kristen's recovery was slow, weeks of physical therapy, careful monitoring, quiet hospital rooms, where the only sounds were beeping machines and shuffling footsteps in the hallway. My parents came to visit her every day, and every day. They saw me doing my job with precision and without anger. They attempted apologies, awkward ones, heavy ones, incomplete ones. My dad said, "We should have asked more questions." My mom said, "I don't know how to make this right." I didn't scream. I didn't gloat. I didn't throw the folder back in their faces. I simply told them the truth. I don't need you to fix the past. I need you to be honest going forward. I accepted their accountability. But I didn't step back into the old role. I wasn't the quiet daughter who absorbed blame to keep the peace. Not anymore. I set boundaries clearly. Honesty or distance. Those were the only two options. The evidence stayed documented. Not as a weapon. Never as a weapon. But as protection. Because I had learned the hard way that love without truth is just a prettier word for control. Rachel and I grew closer after that night. She became the family I choose. Not the family I was assigned. We started having Sunday dinners at my apartment. Simple ones, pasta and bread and conversation that didn't require performance. I walked back into the air the following Monday, budge clipped to my chest, shoes squeaking on the tile. Ready for whatever came through those doors. They cut me off once because of a lie. 6 years later, I was the only one capable of saving her. And this time, they finally saw who I really was. If your family ever believed a lie about you without asking for your side, you know that kind of pain. It doesn't leave you, it just changes shape. Share your story in the comments. I want to hear how you handled it. Subscribe if you've rebuilt your life after being wrongly accused. Click hype to help this story reach others who need it. Did this story hit home? Let me know by liking the video and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Click hype to help this story find others who felt the same way. Your support makes a huge difference.